Lots of people talk about chasing their dreams, but how many actually do it? Welcome to the Pursue Your Passion podcast with Tyler Kamerman. We're going to introduce you to people who are intentionally pursuing their passion every day. Through their stories of success and their struggles, you'll gain insight into how to better begin or continue your journey. Now here's Tyler with today's guest.
What's up, passion pursuers? Tyler Kamerman here with you, coming to you from the Harry Potter studios. It's another solo cast, so just me and you today. Going to talk about what's been going on for the last couple months, recap some amazing guests that we've had on the show for the last few episodes, and just kind of hang out. I say it all the time, but I love hearing from you all. I love to hear where you're at. I love the feedback when I hear that a show really spoke to somebody, or that something I said or something that a guest said helped them get over a hump or get through a struggle that they were facing. And so I love taking the time to get with you on these solo casts and just review what we've been talking about. Gonna jump into it, but I always just like to put a plug in to reach out to me. I love the feedback. I love to hear where things are going well. I'm really interested in what you're struggling with, because that helps me know what to talk about in these episodes, but also the questions to ask the guests to dig deeper into where they're struggling. So excited to be with you again this morning. One big thing that's happened since I last talked to you one-on-one is that my family and I went on a impact trip. And I've talked about Impact because Impact is with many hands, the organization that I'm with, but Impact stands for Immersive Mission, Personal, Action, Challenge, and Transformation. And so we take a little bit of a unique spin on a mission trip in the sense that there's a curriculum that goes with it. We believe that it's super important that we go out into the world to make a difference, but so many times when people go out to another country or to another part of this country to serve, that service stays there. And so when they come back home, maybe not a lot's changed. And so that's a big focus of many hands with our impact trips is, okay, you're going to go over and you're going to be a blessing to others, and you're always going to be blessed. Something's going to be revealed to you. Something new is going to be revealed to you when you're on that trip. But how do you take that back? How do you come back to where you are and make a difference in your everyday world, in your sphere of influence? Because so many times we go and we experience something different, whether it's a mission trip or a vacation, but then we come back and we jump back into the 9 to 5 and everything just goes back to the way that it was. Nothing's changed in our everyday life. So that's a big thing of what we focus on our impact trips with many hands is, how are you going to be different? How are you going to make a difference? We're a faith-based organization. So how are you going to make a difference for Christ back in your hometown? So that was an amazing experience, especially because I was able to do that with my family, with Jessica and Ian and Ariana, and added bonus, my mom joined us as well. So, for me, being in that atmosphere with my family, it was amazing. Seeing their talents. I mean, I obviously I've got a pretty good idea with my wife and my mom, but I've never been in that situation with either of them. And so then to add the kids to it as well. But like I was starting to say, seeing their talents rise to the surface, seeing what they're good at in a different context, seeing the way that they interact with others, and just really just the passion that they bring to their life. It was amazing for me as a dad, as a son, as a husband. Not to get goofy, but like it was neat to see that from all those different angles. And actually, that's perspective was one of my big takeaways. So even when I was there, I'm getting to experience this through different lenses, right? I have my own lens, but then I have my lens as a father. I have my lens as a husband, as a son. And so it was an amazing experience. Coming back from my trip from Haiti, perspective is something that was probably my biggest takeaway. And so you can go back and listen to that episode. I don't want to rehash that too much, but it really made me realize that we our perspective is always evolving whether we want it to or not, and we need to be not only open to that. I think we need to encourage that. We need to find opportunities that are going to help us evolve our perspective, or at a minimum give us the opportunity. Probably a better way to say it is give us the opportunity to experience more, give ourselves the opportunity to see things from different perspectives, so that we can allow ourselves that freedom, and allow ourselves the opportunity to go, oh yeah, that's why this person thinks XYZ, that's why these people do these people, that's not that's not the way I meant it, but people in this area do things this way. I'm just very aware of the fact that when we're raised in one area, that starts to form. I mean, that is our perspective, right? And so, if not everybody has to move, not everybody has to live in different places, but we need to allow ourselves to understand why some people do things some way and other people's do things other ways. And so that perspective needs to be continually evolving. From this particular experience, probably my biggest takeaway was that I need to be more present with my family. And I think I do a good job of that um, most of the time. And I'm not necessarily saying that I need to spend more time with them, although that would be great if I could. But in the time that we are together, being present with them. I mean, the obvious one is it's easy to just be on your screens, right? It's easy to have an iPad in your hand, or your iPhone in your hand, or whatever your device. Plugs for Apple there. We're clearly an Apple family, but it's easy to just be on your device and not be engaging with one another. And I was reminded of that because unfortunately, Ian and I got sick the last days of the trip. So we missed so we were there Sunday through Saturday. We missed out on Friday because we were sick and stayed back at the camp. And then unfortunately we had to travel sick as well, which is no fun at all. But in those 2 days where, Ian and I were kind of connected at the hip, I just realized that even though, now that we're back in the States, they want to do this and they want to do that. And I don't just want to sit at the house, blah, blah, blah. They're always wanting to do something, but at the core of it, they want to be with me. They want to be with Jess. And I need to do a better job of both with Jessica and with the kids of being present in those moments when we're together. But as I've thought about that, as I've unpacked that, it's made me realize that's bigger. Not only for me, but for a lot of us. We're constantly, I mean, even this, even the point of this show is pursuing your passion, right? But if we're always thinking about what's next, if we're always 2 steps ahead, I mean, that's something, I'm always 2 steps ahead. Well, if you're always 2 steps ahead, then you're not right here. And so many times in this fast-paced world that we live in, we're not taking the time to be present. We're either thinking about how we need to fix something that we did in the past, or we're thinking ahead to what we've got to do tomorrow, or to take that a step further, like things are going to be great when I have XYZ, or we're always planning. We're always thinking ahead instead of taking the time to really just be where we are and be in the moment. And I know that sounds a little bit cheesy when I say it that way, but like that was one of my biggest takeaways is I need to do a better job. There still needs to be time for that planning. We still need to set goals. We still need to be intentional about what we're doing, but we need to take that time to be present in the moment, to be connected to people, to be actually, one of the basics of communication that I struggle with is constantly thinking about what to say next when I'm in a conversation, and how much better it is if you just sit and listen, not forming your next not forming your next point, but just sitting and listening and being present with that person. So I got up on my soapbox there a little bit, but that was probably my biggest takeaway from this trip was I need to be more present. And in particular, I need to be more present with my family. Now, in the last drill down that I did, the last solo episode, I talked about how walk through getting unstuck, and you know, it was a really big realization for me, and I'm glad that I was able to share some of that information with you. I don't plug my solo casts all that often, but I will encourage you, if you didn't hear that one, episode 36, to go back and listen to it. There's really some great stuff in there. Just me making some realizations about where I'm at on this pursue your passion journey, and I will say, while I've gotten myself unstuck, I've realized time is an issue right now. Just it feels like, yeah, I mean, you can get stuck in that trap. Life's always busy, but the last few months, the last several months have felt extremely busy. And so now it's a matter of I know what I want to do. I have my goals prioritized. Now it's a matter of figuring out how to continue to move forward on the journey that I see in front of me with maybe shorter time windows. There for a while, I still get up crazy early. When a lot of people are like, "Why do you get up that early?" Well, I number one, that's when it's quiet in my house. So if I want to do if I want to do devotions, if I want to have quiet time by myself, I've got to get up early. But also because I have these other passions. I love my job with many hands. I am passionate about that work, but I do. I have this podcast. I want to share that message with more and more people. So I want to find how I can turn that into public speaking opportunities. And like I've mentioned several times, I have the idea for the book. And so now for me, that I've gotten myself unstuck. I've got, putting one foot in front of the other again, but now it's a matter of, okay, I have this amount of time. How do I get the things done that I want to do? So, while I've prioritized my goals, I've implemented time blocking again, both in my personal time, but also at work. I'm feeling more productive by doing that. I think the biggest challenge for me now is how do I do the things that I want to do in a smaller amount of time? I realize that while I can do it for a short period of time, 6 hours of sleep. I mean, you can read what you want to, or you can read all about sleep. I know plenty of people that operate on 5 or 6 hours of sleep every night, and I know that I'm capable of that. I also realize that I'm a better employee, I'm a better husband, I'm a better father when I'm getting 7 hours of sleep. There's just a big difference between that 6 and 7 hour mark, and so will there be stages where I go back to, hey, I've got to have that extra hour to work on this, and this? Sure. But for the time being, I'm looking at, I can't give up that hour if I want to be my best in all these other areas. So that's where I'm at with my journey. Is I have less time to do the things that I want to do than I did a year or a year and a half ago. And so trying to make that work is probably the biggest hurdle that I'm facing right now, and what I'm going to be working on probably till the next time we hang out one on one like this. Since we last talked, I have had three amazing guests. I know I say that all the time, but I think all my guests are amazing. All three of them have been incredible. Obviously, one of them, or two of them, I should say, one episode, two guests are probably, are a little higher on my list because they were my son and daughter, and I'm excited to kind of recap that with you as well. But just some really great things that came from all three of those very different conversations. I'm going to jump in right away, just to hit some of the high points with Brandon McNace. And Brandon was episode 37, entitled "Stepping Out in Faith." And Brandon is really an incredible person. He has started a ministry where they are freeing slaves in Pakistan. And if you didn't hear the episode, you probably just heard me say that and went, "What?" Yeah, this is totally worth listening to. Brandon is passionate. He's a passionate person about everything that he does. A good friend and just an incredible human being. But he had some. I'll let you go back to the to that episode to really hear his story. But he had some really incredible things that he shared and that we talked about in that episode that I think are really applicable to pursuing your passion, and we talk about with a lot of different guests, like how did you find your passion? Because I know for a lot of people listening to this show, that's something that you struggled with or are struggling with. Like how do you find that? And a couple of things on that line that Brandon said is one, what do you daydream about? I think we talk about what do you dream about a lot, and that can feel overwhelming. Like, I don't know what my dream is. Well, so I love that Brandon said, "What do you daydream about?" Like when you let your mind wander, or sometimes when you accidentally let your mind wander because you're numb in whatever activity you're doing, where does your brain go? And obviously sometimes it's whatever television show you just watched or book that you're reading or whatever. But I also think about, like, yeah, what do you think? What do you daydream about? What are you let yourself be imaginative about, and start to explore that. We also talked to, Brandon said, if you see something that people want and need, and you can do it better. That really resonated with me because that's been the story for 3 or 4, maybe even 5 different guests that I've had on this show. Like, they were working on something, work related or not. They're working on a project and went, "Hey, I can do this better than anybody else that's doing this." And that started them on their journey. And then I also love, Brandon said, there's something for each of us to do. And it's okay if it's small, right? Like, I think too many times we get focused on, I'm me included. As I'm saying this, it's like, okay, maybe I'm just supposed to do the podcast. Maybe I'm never supposed to be a public speaker. Now, that's not going to stop me from trying to chase it until I know that that's the case. But it doesn't always have to be big. It doesn't always have to be grand. There's a million people intentionally pursuing their passion right now that you don't even know about, and probably never will, because they're not going to be on the grand stage. They're not going to be on a television show. They're not going to be a YouTube uh, you know, a big YouTuber or an influencer, but they are passionately doing what they want to. And so I think that's really important to think about when you are trying to figure out what your passion is it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to make you a bunch of money. It doesn't have to make you famous. It's supposed to make you filled with joy. It's supposed to make you feel alive. That's what we're really going for in pursuing our passion. One of the unique things about Brandon is, well, I guess in one way that we're very similar, is his kind of don't think, just jump attitude. Now, while I will promote that from time to time, and he even said this in the show. He's like, that's not necessarily don't think, just jump, like quit your job because you've got this great idea. That's not where he's going. But the point that he's making, the point that I'm trying to make when I bring it up, is that at some point you do have to take risk. It doesn't always have to be a big risk, but in order to do, and I know there's a quote out there, but in order to do something, in order to get somewhere different, you have to start doing things different. And Brandon even said, take that first risk. It doesn't have to be a big jump. Take that first risk, because then the second risk is a little easier and it gets a little bit more comfortable. Once you take a small step outside of your comfort zone, it makes it a little bit easier to take another small step, and then maybe another step, and then maybe even a big step. But most of the time, taking that first step is the hardest, right? And and he also said 2 or 3 times through the episode to questions that I asked, I have no idea what I'm doing. And he's partially kidding, but he's partially not. Like, he is living by faith right now. I mean, he's taken one step faith after another, and that's not the path for everybody. But I thought it's also I wanted to bring that up again in this, one-on-one conversation with you to remind you that it's okay to not always know what you're doing. You don't always have to have everything planned out. And it's important to plan. It's important to set goals. It's important to do all those things, but it's also important to just go ahead and take that risk, to go ahead and take that jump. Brandon, he also said at some point there's going to be risk. Everyone has to come to terms with the fact that we only get one shot at this life. And I thought, that it's not necessarily profound. I think that's the one. If you guys go back, I did do some rapping for you on one of these solo casts. Eminem, you only get one shot, right? But but it's true. We all have to realize that we only get one shot at this. Now, that doesn't mean you only get one shot at this particular thing. He was just saying we only get one shot at this life. So how we do this life is really important. Another thing along those same lines that Brandon said is, am I willing to sacrifice all the things that could be for a guaranteed thing that provides me little to no joy? For him, he was talking about taking a step out of real estate, the job that he thought he was going to be doing for his entire life. Am I willing to sacrifice what could be, what I could go after in order to stay in a spot where I know I'm not supposed to be? That to me, that was like, wow, that one really hit me because I think so many times we're conditioned to go, okay, we have to stay here because this job's secure. We have to stay here because, that's what we're supposed to do. But what are we sacrificing by staying in that comfort zone? And staying along that same line, like I think part of the reason that we stay in that comfort zone is because it's scary, right? It's scary to step outside of there. And Brandon had another, great little golden nugget, as I like to call it. Like, who cares if you fail? We've gotten so conditioned to being afraid of failure. And I think that some of that comes from school, but social media has expounded that so much. Brandon said, stop looking at social media and thinking everyone's life is perfect. And I know we've talked about that before. I know there's tons of people that talk about that. Like, everybody puts their best face on social media. And it's great to see the trips that they're taking and yada yada yada, but that's just compounding that problem of being afraid to fail because we look at this we look at our social media platforms and we see all the success that all these people are having, but you don't we don't see they're not sharing the downsides, right? And maybe that's a challenge right there. Somewhere in that episode also, Brandon said, we don't see the struggle. Very few people see the beginning, right? When you're getting started, they don't see the struggle. We only see what they've become, right? And so I'm taking a lighthearted, like people showing themselves on vacation on social media, but that is a bigger thing. Like, we don't typically get to see the grind, right? Unless we're walking alongside of somebody through their passion project, through a business that they're trying to get off the ground. We don't see the hard part. We only see, okay, so and so made it, so and so's doing this. So when we're trying to do that ourselves, we need to keep that in mind. Like, get around people that are doing those same things because they're the ones that are going to be able to breathe life into you. They're the ones that are going to be able to say, "Hey, I was there and then this is what I did." So yeah, just uh going back to that, don't be afraid to fail, and also, yeah, stop taking cues from from social media, right? Another thing that Brandon said that I thought was really awesome is the world would be such a better place if everyone would begin to use their passion and talent to move forward. It would be. I mean, if we all started listening more to that call in our heart, we would be happier, which helps to make our family and the people around us happier. And yeah, I loved that thought. Another topic of conversation with Brandon, because he is his organization is a nonprofit. Board of directors typically forms a lot sooner with a nonprofit than a board of directors happens with a company, right? But in talking about that, you build a team if you're going to build a company, and also I've heard more and more people talk about having their personal board of directors. A good friend from the Weston Wing Leadership Academy shared that with me, and she just talked about how she had 3 or 4 people that she considers her personal board of directors, and that really, the conversation with Brandon made me think about that. Like, it's important to have those people around us. Brandon said, find the opportunities to be in a room with people smarter than you as frequently as possible. And I would say that's a great challenge for everybody listening, whether that's at work, whether that's at church, whether it's something a little less organic where you're just like, okay, I have to figure out how to get in more frequently, get into places where there's people that are smarter than me that I can learn from. Hamilton, in the room where it happens, right? Uh, so we need to challenge ourselves. We need to challenge ourselves in a lot of different ways in life, but that really hit me. Like, what am I doing to get in places where I can learn from almost everybody in the room that I'm in? Specifically, to building that board or building a team, we all need accountability. So if you're at that point in your journey where, for me, I hired a coach, and we'll probably be going back to that coach soon for that accountability piece. Now, I'm not saying you necessarily have to pay someone for accountability, but if that person that is providing accountability can also help you walk through those steps, that's where a coach can be a really good idea. But for Brandon, for other nonprofits, for people who are starting to build something, that accountability can come from building a board of directors and or building a team around you. And Brandon talked about, he had this dream, he has this passion. And same thing for you. You have a dream, you have a passion, you have to protect it. It's okay to have a shared vision. It's okay to bring people in. In fact, sometimes it's not just okay, it's necessary. But don't lose that dream that was originally put on your heart. Sometimes it's the right time to bring in a partner. Sometimes it's the right time, like I've been talking about, to build a team or to build a board of directors. But you need to stay true. And that's not me saying don't listen to opinions, but you need to stay true to that original passion that was put on your heart, even as you build the team around you. And I think that's super important. We also spent a little time talking about legacy, and had a guest almost probably a year ago now that was really focused on legacy, because he was fortunate that he was able to sell a business, and was now building a second business. And so monetarily, he was very successful. He had a lot of things lined up there. And so his focus had really shifted to how do I build my legacy? And that was something that Brandon talked about too. Like, he was looking at his kids and his grandkids, but if you don't have kids, legacy can be important too. What does this look like for the next generation and the generation after that? How can I sow into those that are coming after me? And building their dreams, building their dreams and gifts, even if it's inconvenient for you, right? Helping people find what they're called to do, and then helping them step into that. That is a huge, finances aside, everything, your own family aside, that's something that we can all do. Is helping, reaching out to people, helping them find what they're called to do, and then helping them along that path. And I think that that's why I'm so passionate about this podcast. Is I get to hear from you. I get to hear from the people that this is helping along their journey. And so I know that this is one thing that I'm doing as far as my legacy is concerned, is just this podcast alone. Even if this is where the pursue your passion journey, if this is all the further it goes, I know that I'm making a lasting impression because I'm getting that feedback. And so, I want to encourage you to do the same thing. Where are those places in life where you can be helping others to start to pursue their passion as well. And that's actually a great segue into talking a little bit about the next guest on my show, which was my son Ian and my daughter Ariana. Insights from Elementary School is what we titled the podcast, and it was so fun to sit down with them, and I talked a little bit about that at the beginning of the episode. But these two, from especially my son, but both of them from the time I started the podcast, were, when do we get to be on the show? When are you going to interview us? They would ask almost every time they saw the equipment out. And finally, I actually had the equipment out to interview Brandon, and they walked in and they said, Dad, when can we be on the podcast? And I thought, you know what, we're going to be going to Abaco so they can talk about that. And I really thought about the fact that how much that's going to fill their bucket, right? And that's something that I need to do more of with them, but with other people in my life as well. Just literally 30 seconds ago. Now it's probably more like 2 minutes ago. Helping to build people's dreams and gifts, even if it's inconvenient for you, even if it feels like this really isn't going to benefit me, right? Like we have to take the time to sow into other people. And for me, I know I do a good job with them. I'm not going to downplay that. I know I could do a good job, but I can always do a better job of just building them up. I think the challenge as a parent is it's your job to discipline too, right? And so you have to correct. You have to change directions. You have to help them do that. But Jess and I talk a lot about what are we doing to build them up? How can we do a better job of encouraging them in the places where they're starting to show, the most interest? So it was a great conversation with Ian and Ari. And I loved listening to the episode to just hear their personalities. If you haven't listened to it, I am super proud of my kids, and I'm not afraid to brag a little bit on them. They do not, especially on this podcast, they don't come off as an 11 and 9-year-old. They speak well. They're intelligent kids. You can probably hear that I'm smiling ear to ear right now just talking about them. But they're amazing. And some of the takeaways from that episode that I loved hearing them say is, don't be afraid of new experiences and the opportunity to meet new people. At 11 and 9 years old, they were going out and introducing themselves, being confident around people in another country. And I think as adults, we might downplay that a little bit, but this is the first time they've been outside of the country. And hardly did either of them miss a beat. We talk about, we were serving at this school, and it was high school girls came in for basketball practice, and Ariana was watching them play, and the coach was like, "Hey, do you want to jump in?" And without missing a beat, she just jumped in and started running the drills with these high school girls. That's the kind of confidence that I want them to hold on to as they go into life. That's the kind of confidence that we should be trying to build into those around us, not just children, not just our own children, but helping to build people up so that they have the confidence to go after the things that they want to do. It's huge. That's one of those things that can, shift the path of someone's life, to just have someone confidently, or to have someone leaning into them to help build their confidence. They also said, when you try new things, you come up with new ideas. And it's true. We have to let ourselves step out of our comfort zone and try new things, because that's going to help us come up with new ideas. Again, that's applicable if you're trying to figure out what your passion is. If you're running that race and you get stuck, go do something new. If you just keep doing the same routine, it's a lot harder to come up with new ideas. On this show, and I may have talked about it before, but set a goal, put in the work, and then enjoy the success or learn from the process. Ian got to experience very tangibly, and a lot of times it doesn't happen this fast, but we were doing goals at the beginning of the year, and he said, I want to be I want to be at the top of my class in math. I want to do, I want to be ahead in math. And I said, okay. And then he also brought up there's this math competition coming up, and I want to be one of the 4 kids that goes from my school. So there's I think it's a statewide, maybe even a nationwide math contest, but it starts within, with like the Des Moines metro area. And so each elementary school has 4 kids that are chosen to go to this math competition. And then I forget, 2 or 3 schools go on to the next level, or, something like that, like a spelling bee, but with math, and it's a team. And so we kind of put together a plan that every day he would, spend 50, or every other day, I forget now, but he would spend some extra time in math, 15 minutes a day, just doing extra math problems. And, long story short, he made the team. And so he started doing the work. He started doing the work in January. And so for about a month, he was doing this extra math. So it was a very quick payoff. And I let him know a lot of times we have to work, longer than that to meet these goals. But for me as a dad, it was huge, like to be able to tangibly go, okay, you put in the work, you hit your goal, and now you got to, you got the success that you were hoping for. But I'm also working with them both on like, hey, even if you don't get the success you're looking for, what did we learn from the process, right? And then in that I talk to them a lot about, you can do anything you want to do if you're willing to put in the work. I think too many parents, too many people, when we start speaking that life into people, it's like, oh, you can do whatever you want to. It's like, no, you can't. Like, and in all reality, we're starting to be a little realistic with that. But I'm trying to hold off as long as possible. Like if my son says I want to be a professional basketball player, man, I don't know. You were blessed with your dad's athletic ability, so the chances of that happening, no matter how much work you put in, are really slim. Now, that said, you need to dream, but then you need to put in the work to get there. And that's the piece that I'm really trying to get them to understand is it's the work that gets you there. It's the dream that keeps you passionate, but it's the work that gets you to where you want to go. Another thing from that episode that I wanted to touch on just briefly, but I ask all my guests what they wanted to be when they were kids. And so instead of saying when you were kids, I just asked my kids what they wanted to be. And Ian said, I'm 11 and I'm getting to an age where I'm getting asked that a lot. And that really hit me, like, cuz we don't really talk about that a ton, partially because I think it's way too young for him to feel that pressure. And so I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking, well, who's talking to you? Like, who is making you feel like you need to know what you want to be when you're 11? And that it made me think about the fact that I think there's just like this unique, in my view, I want my kids to be kids. I'm trying to teach them, my goal is to raise successful adults, right? But right now, I want them to be kids. I want them to dream. I want them to think about what they want to be when they grow up. But the Ian's answer just made me feel like he was already feeling pressure about making that decision. And, I just, I, I wanted to comment on that because, like, I feel like if that is the case, if kids are already in late elementary school feeling like they're supposed to know what they're doing, we need to shift some things because I'm 45 and I love what I'm doing, but I mean, I was joking, 3 years ago, I'm like, I don't even know if I know what I want to be when I grow up. So, there's, I think we need to guide, we need to direct, we need to speak into strengths, but we need to try to let kids keep their minds open to what they want to do. Right. Then they were, talking about, what if someone was struggling, with pursuing something? What would you say? And I love that they're both they love YouTube. They've got their YouTube channels that they make. And they just said, well, you come up with more creative ways to spread the word. Like if you have a lawn care service, well, you go hang up flyers. And if you are trying to be, do more online, just create more content. I just loved hearing that because it helped me realize that they know that if they want to go after something, that there's ways to do that. Like, hey, if I'm trying, just yesterday actually, their friend was raising money, on a whim, I'm sure, but raising money for cystic fibrosis, and they decided they were going to have a bake sale. So my kids ran around the neighborhood and were handing out flyers so that so that they could sell more brownies. So just but I think the thing as you're listening that you can keep in mind is that what's the next step? What can I do that I haven't been doing to get the word out about what I am passionate about? And on those lines, maybe you could write a book. My friend Lori Tyson, she wrote a book called "This Book Sucks: Feeding Your Baby Should Not." So this was a very focused. I shouldn't say very focused episode, but I do want to say are if you are pregnant, if you have a friend, family member, anyone who is pregnant that is thinking about breastfeeding, you need to go back and listen to this episode. You should go get this book because Lori is really passionate about what she does. She struggled with feeding her son, with breastfeeding her son, and worked with different doctors, worked with lactation consultants, and really from those frustrations is why she decided to go back to school to become a nurse and then to become a lactation consultant. And the thing that for me, so many passions so many passion projects are born from problems that we need to overcome, or struggles that we faced. And I think that's really important to think about, because when you've walked through something, you are uniquely positioned to help others do the same thing. So, Lori had troubles with this in feeding her son, and so now she's passionate about helping others. And there's lots of areas where that can come from. But for me, that was like a really big realization, like, hey, a lot of these passion projects come from struggles, come from problems. So again, if you're one of those that's still like trying to figure out what that looks like, where are those spots in your life where you've had to overcome something that now maybe that makes you, it gives you a unique perspective to help others. And that was another thing that really stuck out from me or stuck out for me in the conversation with Lori, was always be looking for ways to help. That's something that, if we're, not trying to sound too kumbaya, heal the world, but like that's huge. I mean, like, if we're always looking to help, if we're looking to help the person across the street from us, that's just going to make the world a better place, right? Even if we're not speaking, helping them pursue their passion, we're just out there trying to help. That's a good thing. We need more of that, right? Another big one from Lori was shift your perspective. And I've already talked about perspective on this one. So obviously that one resonated. I've already talked about perspective in this episode, excuse me. So obviously that resonates for me. But in shifting your perspective, be aware of all of your resources. Be aware of the people that are around you. Be aware of the learning that you've had in the past. Lori took a creative partner from her time in Los Angeles. They would write projects together and just have fun, mess around on things as well. But that's who she went with. That's who she went to when she wanted to write this book. Lori knew that she had the content, she had all the ideas in her brain, and she went to her friend and said, "Hey, let's write a book together." And she just started feeding her ideas. And her friend is more on the artistic side, and she started producing the pictures for the book. And they just started, they would bounce things off each other. One idea would come from one way, and the other idea would go the other way. And pretty soon they've got this really incredible book that is factual, is scientific, but at the same time it's lighthearted, and it takes a fun approach to what can be a difficult, can be a challenging thing for new moms, for new families. And Lori also talked about being open to change, staying flexible. And I know that sounds like, oh yeah, of course, yeah, I'll stay open to change, but it's really something that, and again, I kind of talked about this at the beginning of the show too, like, we have to stay flexible. We have to stay open to new perspectives. We have to stay open to new experiences because number one, that allows for collaboration, but also it allows us to continue to become better people. It allows us to see things, to experience things alongside others, and that just makes us, again, better people in general, but allows us to more passionately go after those passions that are in our lives. And so the conversation with Lori was fantastic. She's just been on a really interesting journey. It's neat to see the through lines, though, as I look at one guest to another from completely different industries, from completely different walks of life, to see how it's all connected, how when a passion gets put on our heart, we are meant to go after it. And so I just want to continue to encourage you to do that. I hope every episode that you listen to, there's at least one thing. I hope there's 10 things, but I hope there's at least one or two things that you go, okay, that's what I needed to hear today. That's what I needed to do to take that next step. And so again, I just want to encourage you, if you haven't already, please get in touch with me. Let me know what you're working on. Let me know what you're passionate about. And then a favor that I have to ask, if you haven't reviewed the show, please give it a 5-star or 4-star, whatever the top one is. If you got to give me less, that's okay. But any review helps get the word out. And if you have the time to just say, to write a little bit about how the show has been useful for you, the more reviews that we have on each of these platforms, the more it reaches other people. And if you're willing, share it on your social media, or if you hear somebody at work talking about being stuck or wanting to get after a passion, tell them about the show. The more listeners that we have, the more people that we're helping. So keep that in mind as you're out there chasing after it. Keep your head down and keep pursuing those passions.
If you have questions or would like to contact us, please check out the show details for contact information. Thanks for listening to the Pursue Your Passion podcast.